Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So first of all, I just wanted to say hi. Welcome, everybody. I'm Sammy. I'm speaking from South Africa. I'm the African correspondent for Montessori Everywhere. And it's a real pleasure being here with everyone tonight. And the other African correspondent is Prudence. Do you want to introduce yourself, Prue, all the way from Nigeria?
Okay, hello everyone. Great to be with you tonight. It's an awesome privilege to be anchoring this program together with Sammy. My name is Prudence Daniels and I'm joining from Nigeria, Lagos. I am founder of Moma Hill Montessori School. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you.
So it's a real privilege to introduce you guys to my very, very good friend, Gamu. I studied with Gamu a few years ago now, and I was completely blown away by Gamu's story. Gamu is a Zimbabwean girl. We met in South Africa when we were studying together, and she's going to give us a little insight into her Montessori journey and how she came across it, how she uses Montessori in her life, how it's influenced her decisions over the last few years. And yeah, I think you're going to be really inspired by her because she's an amazing young woman. And I think she's going to be hugely influential in the Montessori world in years to come. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you and hand you over to Gamu.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Gamu. I'm Zimbabwean. So I was born in Zimbabwe, and in 2012, my family moved to South Africa. So Montessori has changed my perspective towards children and just people in general. So I've come to understand that everybody is unique and special in their own way, and they can develop at their own pace, as long as you give them the opportunity and environment to stimulate their full potential.
And how did your education differ from the Montessori method that you now use yourself? Because obviously you didn't go to a Montessori school yourself, did you?
No.
And so how did your education differ to the way that you teach now yourself?
All right. So I went to the traditional schools, and as we all know, most of us here, Montessorians, I believe, that in the traditional schools, the teacher leads the children. Whereas in Montessori, now we let the child lead and the teacher follows. We're just there to help them and help them develop their full potential. And yeah.
So in Zimbabwe, what's the Montessori world like in Zimbabwe? Are there Montessori schools? Like, had you ever heard of it when you were in Zimbabwe? You know, when did you first come across this method?
All right. So I'm going to talk about Zimbabwe and then later on talk about South Africa, because that's where I spent most of my childhood. So in Zimbabwe, there are Montessori schools, but they're not 100% Montessori schools. So it's half Montessori and half the traditional learning, so which is not completely Montessori. And now I'm going to talk about South Africa, where I did my training. So I came to know about the Montessori world in 2017 when I did the training. So it was my mom who heard about the training, and she knew that I was passionate about children, and she came to let me know that there was going to be a Montessori training that was coming to South Africa. Would I be interested? And I did some research, and from that moment, I just fell in love with Montessori, and I knew that it was exactly what I wanted to do. So I started doing some research. I applied and I got accepted. I was very happy, and that's when my Montessori journey started. So I know in South Africa at the moment we have over 400 Montessori schools. And it started, I think, just before the 1917, because when I was doing some research, I came to find out that in the 1917, that was when the second Montessori school was opened in Cape Town, whereas the first one was opened before that. I didn't get the year which it was opened, but it was called the Saint Francis in the Forest, and it was run by three sisters in Johannesburg.
That's really interesting. And is that school still there, Gamu?
I have no idea. When I tried to do some more research, I couldn't get far. So I'll definitely find out if it's still there or if it's no longer there. But I believe it will still be there.
And were you teaching before you did your training, or was your first experience of teaching in a classroom, was that after you'd done your training?
Yes. So when I did, just after my training, when I had to do the teaching practice, that was the first time I was ever in a classroom teaching or in a Montessori environment. But I remember when I was still in school, when I was still in high school, we used to visit some preschools around Kayamandi. For those who are familiar with Cape Town, there is a community called Kayamandi in Stellenbosch. We used to visit some schools, some preschools, some creches where we'd just go and spend some time with the children. But we were not in classroom with them. It was just playtime, and we just do a lot of things with them. During Christmas time, we'd go there, and I remember there was a time when we'd go every Thursday. So once a week, we'd go and visit them, but it was not formally teaching them. We'd just be visiting and spending time with them.
Yeah, that's so it's not a thing of the Western world so much. It's something that I've really noticed since being in Africa. There's this spirit of like community service that people just give themselves over. I don't know if you might want to interject here, Prudence, in Nigeria, because I've never been to Nigeria, but for me, coming from the Western world, we do community service, maybe like if we have to complete it for a certificate or something. But in Africa, you give your service to everyone, and it's never a chore. It's something that the African people do because it's their pleasure, and they spend time on the weekends in their communities, and it's not like I'm a teacher, so I teach in a school. It's like, oh, I have a school opposite me, and I'm going to go and give my service. I don't know what you think, Prue. Is it the same in Nigeria?
Yeah, really, it's
Yes,
part of the
yes,
culture.
yes.
It's part of the culture of community service. It's part of what we do. Everybody's responsible for the next person. Although in recent times, because of security issues, things are changing a lot. But it didn't used to be like that. Before now, community service was expected from everyone. Yeah, it's an expectation. And so everyone does it as part of their way of life. But because of security issues, growing concerns from security, most of the community freedom is waning and is really going down. Yeah.
Yeah, that goes very much against the African culture. It's freedom is such a big thing, isn't it? Like being able to give to your neighbor and everything, which I think Montessori would have been a big fan of. But Gamu, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So Gamu, you have two children yourself, and I have to tell everyone that when Gamu had her first child, it was within our first few weeks of when we studied together in Stellenbosch in South Africa. She was pregnant and she gave birth one day. And the next day, she was in the classroom with her 1-day-old baby sleeping under the table, which I just thought was completely mind-blowing. And it's just absolutely incredible. So I feel like Tanisha might have absorbed everything that was going on in that classroom. Maybe she'll be a Montessorian herself. But Gamu, how does the Montessori method, how do you use that in your home? Like, how has that affected? Because you were training to be a Montessori teacher at the same time as becoming a mother. So how has that affected your way of mothering and your life with your children?
All right. So yeah, like what Sammy said, just after I gave birth, I just went back to the classroom because I didn't want to miss my lectures. But and Tanisha was part of the Montessori environment, and I'm so grateful that Julia made a space for her, and would have some time to observe her. Okay, so how am I applying Montessori in my life with my kids? So, like normally in Africa, we get to detect what children must do. So we don't normally give. I think Prudence will agree with me on this one, that it's not in all families, but majority of the families, we get to dictate for the children what they must do. So they cannot have the complete free will of what they want to do and when they want to do it. So as the adult, we get to choose for them. But now that I'm a Montessorian, and now that I'm a Montessori mom and a Montessori teacher, I give my children the free will, and I just let them do whatever they want to do, but obviously giving them the limits. So they have the freedom, but within the freedom, they have limits. And I always talk to my children about grace and courtesy. So I teach them from a very young age how to say thank you, um, how to say please, and not obviously forcing them to say it. But when I give them something, then I lead by example. I tell them, oh, when somebody gives you something, we say thank you. And later on, you just start seeing that um, it becomes a way of their life. So we also do some practical life activities at home, which my children really love. So my youngest daughter, I have two girls. My youngest daughter is 1 year and 4 months. So she loves sweeping, she loves mopping. Now that we've started doing toileting, whenever we have an accident and she pees on the floor, she'll quickly run and get a mop and mop sweeping, even without me saying that she should do it. But I mean, she's been seeing her sister do it. So whatever her sister's been doing, she's been really doing it. She's been really wanting to do the same thing. And so my oldest daughter is in the 3 to 6 environment at school. And when everybody has been asking me at school, her teachers, if she does a lot of helping with the preparing of food, supper, breakfast, things like that, because every day it has become part of her routine to make sure that she prepares the snack for everyone in class. So she'll be peeling cucumbers and she'll be slicing the apples, doing everything. I mean, it's because she's been seeing this at home, and sometimes she's been asking me if she can help me cook, and I'll just give her something to do. So it's really been, I mean, if when I look at my kids, they really reflect what I do at work. I'm really excited that they still continue doing the practice at home. It's not only at school when they get to see these things, so it's also at home that we try our best to make sure that they're also exposed to the Montessori philosophy at home.
That's amazing, Gamu. I mean, talk about it being within those children. It's just truly going to be innately within them. It's not even going to be a thing that they need to like think about or learn. Or and it's funny because when we were doing our observations, when we were studying together, we were, we had to do our observation hours, everyone in the classroom. And I mean, Tanisha, I think every single one of us in the classroom observed Tanisha. So she was the first child I observed from a Montessorian's perspective. And it, when we understand the principle of, the first 6 weeks of life, and how vital that is to us as human beings, Tanisha is just, I mean, she's going to be the most extraordinary child, because she really had, from a Montessorian's perspective, she had the most amazing start to life, and it was very peaceful. Gamu, do you remember? Because I remember it was the first time you became a mother. You'd never done any of this before, and even like breastfeeding and being in tune with her, but at the same time putting her down at 5 days old, and all of us sitting around her from a distance trying to respect Tanisha's space and observing her movements. And I remember Gamu being like, oh, trying to navigate that. And did you find that difficult, Gamu, when we were in the classroom? And did you have any challenges, becoming a first time mother, and also trying to, you know open your mind and establish some grounds for, you know, becoming a teacher and a Montessorian and studying at the same time?
Okay. So I obviously had some challenges. I mean, when Tanisha was born, and I remember went back to the environment, it was 3 days after, because she was born on Saturday. So it was during the weekend, but I had not been in class since Thursday. So actually my labor pain started when I was in the environment. And I just quickly finished my assignment, submitted it, and I left for the hospital. And I was there on Friday and Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I went back to class. So it was a bit difficult for me in the beginning, being a new mom, and now that everybody was observing, I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to expect. And at some point, I was afraid. Since it was my first time in the Montessori, so I didn't know that you would not. One thing I like about Montessori is there's no judgment. But you know, as a new mom and you're doing everything right in front of people, imagine from changing the diaper, breastfeeding. It was my first time. I have no idea, and I remember at that point. So at some point, my nipples were hurting me, and I was in so much pain. But I had to look strong. I was afraid of judgment if I was going to look weak. And I was also so determined that I really wanted to do my training, and I want to finish it. I want to complete the, and for most of you who've done it, you know that you have to have a 90% attendance. So I really wanted to have that. So with that in mind, and also trying to balance being a mom and being in the environment, it was difficult at some point, but I was really grateful for the support that I received from everybody in the environment. I mean, at times when Julia, who was our trainer, would see that I'm just not coping, I had days when I'd start falling asleep in class, and she'd just be like, it's absolutely fine, and she'd help me with the notes. I mean, as much as I tried to stay up and be awake at all times, when Tanisha would start sleeping, sometimes I'll just completely blank out. And it was very helpful that I had trainers who understood. I had a group of ladies who understood what I was going through. So that whole thing just made it so much easier for me. So it wasn't, it was so effortless. I mean, with their help, I was so grateful. Everything was just so smooth in the end. It's just the first days that were a bit rough and difficult. But when I realized the amount of support and love I was receiving from everybody, I just became strong and really grateful.
Yeah, amazing, Gamu. Really amazing. I just remember being in complete awe of your strength. So it's funny that you know, on your side, you were obviously with like totally feeling like overwhelmed by becoming a new mother. But I remember just being in utter awe of you. But so Gamu, going back to your childhood, so you moved to from Zimbabwe to South Africa when?
So my mom moved a bit earlier. So she moved, I mean, I think around 2008. So my mom and my dad moved to South Africa, and I was still in Zimbabwe with my brothers. And 2012, she decided to come and take us. And then that's when the whole family permanently moved to South Africa.
And how old were you, Gamu?
So the time I moved to South Africa, I was, oh my goodness, I'm trying to calculate how old I was.
Were you a teenager? Were you a teenager?
Yes, I was in my teenage years, because I remember I had just started high school in Zimbabwe, and I had to go and repeat in South Africa.
Okay, because I think there was a bit of this that maybe some people on this interview would have missed, but Gamu is now based in the Ivory Coast. So when we met, you had come to South Africa, and then Gamu and I actually worked together in Stellenbosch at a Montessori school, and it was both of our first jobs together. So we were both navigating that. We built the classroom together. In a lovely school, a farm school in the depths of the winelands. And Gamu and I, yeah, we opened this classroom together, and about halfway through the year, if I'm correct, Gamu, correct me if I'm wrong, you said to me, Sammy, I want to go abroad. I want to take this further. I want to go abroad, and I said to you, let me do anything I can to help you do that, because I've lived in many different places. So I said, let's have a look. And you pulled together a CV. And for the first time really in your life, you moved away from your family and you went to the Ivory Coast. And I think, Gamu, you were there for how long before your husband and your children were able to join you? I think it was like 6 months or something. It was a very long time, right?
They joined me just after a month, if I
After a
remember.
month.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, Gamu, what school do you work at now in the Ivory Coast? How long have you been in the Ivory Coast?
Okay. So I'm just going to take you a little bit back and explain to you how I got to the Ivory Coast, because it was really, I mean, even until today, if I sit and think about it, I'm just amazed at how fast it went and how everything else was just, I didn't even think about it. So what happened was, one of our friends that we did the training with got a job in the Ivory Coast soon after the training. And that's when Semi and I were working in Newberry House in South Africa. So after that, she posted, I remember one evening, she posted on our WhatsApp platform saying that there could be a vacancy at her workplace. And if anybody was interested, they should let her know so she can send them the email address to send their CV. So I didn't think about it at that point. I just thought this is an opportunity. I need to grab it. And I did not even think about it. I remember asking my mom the next day after I sent her a message saying I think I would be interested and she should send me the email address. And I asked my mom, what would be her reaction if I tell her that I'll be leaving the country to go to a different country? And she was like, no, you can't do that. I mean, alone, are you sure you're going to be safe? And and my childhood, I didn't spend a lot of time with my mom. I was mostly in boarding schools and with my mom's sisters. So this was the first time when I moved to South Africa. I was really getting that. We were building our relationship with my mom. I was close to my mom and we were having so much fun. And I think if I think about it now, I just think maybe my mom still wanted us to maintain that space and just being around each other and not having, she didn't want to have me away again for a long time. So I told my mom, you know what, mom, I'm just going to make a decision. And I don't know if you're going to support the decision, but even if you're not going to support the decision, I think I'm still going to go for it. So I remember applying for the job. And then afterwards, I told my husband that I was going to apply for a job. He was also like, no. And I remember when I spoke to my mother-in-law and she told me, you know what, you have to go for it. And I actually thought, okay, I have somebody who's supporting my idea, so I might as well just go ahead. I applied Tanisha didn't have a passport that time because we were in South Africa. We had to go to Zimbabwe to apply for a passport. So I took Tanisha to Zimbabwe. We went and we applied for a passport. So Tanisha's passport didn't come out in time. And I had to leave Tanisha in Zimbabwe. So I had to make that decision. It's either I was going to stay and miss my flight to come to the Ivory Coast, or I was going to leave Tanisha. In that time, she was only 1 year, 4 months. If not 1 year, 3 months. So I left her in Zimbabwe and it was not easy at all, but I just had to be strong. And because I just had this comfort in my head that she was anyways going to be, we're anyways going to see each other in a few months' time or whenever we're going to see each other, but I just had to do it for her. So I left Tanisha, went to South Africa, stayed for 2 days, left my husband in tears and my mom, and I went to the Ivory Coast. And after a month, Tanisha came and joined me in the Ivory Coast. So that was also another, I mean, I had to make a very important decision if I was going to leave them or if I was going to take them with me. And I just decided, you know what, I have to go on my own and see if it's going to be a right place for us to raise our child, if it's going to be a good working place for me. And if not, if I'm on my own, I can easily come back to South Africa. So I'm really grateful that I made that. I'm grateful to myself that I made that decision, because right now I'm very happy where I am. So I work at a school called Ivory Montessori School, which was the first AMI Montessori school in Ivory Coast.
Amazing. Oh my goodness, the courage, Gamu. Real courage. It's amazing. It's so admirable. And what were your first feelings when you arrived in the Ivory Coast? Where did you go? Did you know where you were going to live? Did the school put you up, or how did it work? Because you'd obviously never been there before, and what was going through your mind?
Okay, so when I got to the Ivory Coast first, I just thought of returning back to South Africa. That was what came to my mind immediately, because it was so different. I mean, I had spent my time in my life in South Africa, and South Africa is so well developed and so many things. So there were so many changes. There were so many changes when I got here, and I just couldn't believe I had made that decision before I had really looked into where I was going, which I did actually over the internet. I mean, I just did a little bit of research, and you know that Google always tell you the right and the best things. So
Yeah, so true.
I just got here with a lot of expectancies, and when I got here, it was shattered. There were so many things that were different, and I didn't know that I was coming to 100% French-speaking country. 'Cause I remember when my boss was interviewing me, and she told me that so how am I going to keep her, because it's a French speaking country, and I told her that I was going to learn the French. But when she said that, I didn't think it was 100% French, like there was no English. Okay, maybe I would say 10% English. So I thought maybe there was 50% English, 50% French, and just trying to navigate myself, trying to orientate myself in a French speaking country, which I'm like 100% English speaking. I don't know any French. It was so difficult in the beginning, but right now I'm so glad that I can speak the French and I'm able to communicate.
Are you fluent, Gamu? Are you fluent French?
Uh, I am quite fluent, but I have people I speak to in French, and I have people who I still speak to in English.
Yeah, of course, of course. So is 100% of your classroom then run in French? There's no English in the classroom at all?
So I teach in English. So in each environment, we have an English speaking and a French speaking teacher. And so we have in my classroom, for instance, I'm English speaking. So I have a French speaking assistant and I have an English speaking assistant.
Okay. Okay. So it's like, is it like a sort of
Bilingual.
yeah, bilingual, but obviously, so you have to speak English 100% of the time to the children, and the French teacher speaks French 100% of the time, and the children absorb both languages, and the result is that we hope that they'll be bilingual in time.
Yes, exactly.
That's amazing. So how long did it take you to get to that stage then where you were able to like navigate your way around a French speaking classroom having never spoken French ever?
Okay, so at school, at work, I mean, it wasn't that difficult, because when I arrived, I met a friend, a very good friend of mine from Nigeria, and I met my assistant was also French English speaking, so they both helped me so much, and my boss was English speaking, and so in at work it wasn't that difficult. So it became so tough when I had to get a nanny for Tanisha when they came to join me. And the nanny was French speaking. So 100% French speaking. So I had to learn the French so fast so I could be able to communicate with her, tell her what I wanted her to do, and just for her to be able to understand whatever I was saying. So that was one of the things that put so much pressure on me to be able to get to learn the French so fast. And also working with children, I mean, they're still developing their language. So I was in the perfect environment. I just took myself as a toddler and I started learning the French from there. So whatever they would be saying, I would ask my assistant what it meant in English, and she would tell me. And that's how I got to speak the French. So when I'd be home with the nanny, I would try to practice whatever I've had at school when the children were speaking. And at some point, my assistant, my English speaking assistant, went on maternity leave. So I had to stay with my French speaking assistant. So I also had to make sure that I understood, because with her, she doesn't understand a lot of English. Only now that she started picking up some English, but by then she didn't understand anything. So I had to start learning and making sure that I put to practice whatever I was hearing people saying, whatever I was hearing the kids saying, and that really helped me a lot to be able to speak the French.
That is amazing. Who learnt the French quicker? Was it you or Tanisha?
So funny. So I think I don't know. I mean, I think right now Tanisha and I just speak French at home.
No,
So I think
really?
I tell you. So that's
Gamu,
probably.
that's amazing. Amazing.
So Tanisha speaks three languages. She speaks French, she speaks Shona, which is our home language from Zimbabwe, and she speaks English. And Keisha speaks French and Shona. I think she's picking up some Shona words as well. She understands when her father speaks to her, because he speaks Shona to the girls all the time. And I've been caught between speaking, because at some point, there was a point when I couldn't find some nannies who could speak French to the kids, so they would only speak the local languages. And I really wanted the kids to speak the French, because otherwise they'll be confused when they go to school and they didn't have the French. So I started speaking French to Tanisha, and right now we can speak French all the time. And I'm trying to switch from French to English, because I have a very good nanny who speaks good French, and she's exposed to enough French at school. So now I want her to get a balance between Shona, English, and French. So I'm going to be speaking English with them anytime soon.
Amazing. And Gamu, so do you have any stories from your classroom in the Ivory Coast? Because I imagine quite a few of the people who are on this call at the moment probably may have been to Africa, may have not been to Africa, may have taught in an African school, maybe not. And do you have any interesting stories of working with the children in your classroom in the Ivory Coast that you think people might enjoy?
I don't think I have an interesting story, but I have a story that really inspires me, that I would like to share with you guys. So at the beginning of the year, so I've been working at Ivory Montessori School for 3 school years. So it's 2 years, but 3 school years, because the school year starts in June and it ends. It starts in September and it ends in June. So when I joined the team, it was in the middle of the school year. So this is my third school year at IMS. So at the beginning of the year, we went for our team building, like we always do at the beginning of each year. And we had to write down our resolutions for this year. And one of the points I wrote down was I wanted to grow in whatever was doing. I wanted growth this year. I mean, and I wanted my children that were moving up to the 3 to 6 environment to be more and more prepared when they move up. And that was one of the things I wrote down. So when we opened schools, I got a child in my classroom who had I don't know if I should say because he's not diagnosed yet, but I mean, he was a special needs child, and he's a bit different to all the other children. So in the beginning, I mean, it was so difficult for me to know how I can help him, because, when we did the training, we really didn't go into how we help special needs children. So I didn't know how to help the child, and every time I would try to find ways on how I would help, because it was very different from the other children, but still unique in his own way. And so at some point I started thinking, and I just thought, you know what, this is exactly what I asked for when I wrote down and I said I wanted to grow in this Montessori journey. Because I mean, with having this challenge, I had to learn how to deal with him, how to help him. And it was so difficult in the beginning. But as we speak, because when he joined, he's almost 3, he couldn't speak and he couldn't interact with the other children. It was so difficult for him. But right now, as we speak, the child has started talking, he started saying some words, and I've started working with him, doing some presentations one-on-one, and we have a lot of one-on-one time where we just show him some love and things like that. And he's just changed so much, and I was so amazed and I was so happy to just see that.
That's really, really cool, and so special that that child has found himself in a Montessori learning environment, in a place where you are.
Yeah.
And so, Gamu, just a few last things, because I think this is super cool. Your plan here is to go to London. Am I correct?
Yes.
So can you tell everyone, Gamu, what your plan is this year, and why you may or may not be heading over to London at some point?
All right. So this year my plan is to go to London, like Sammy has said. I want to go and do my 3 to 6 training, because one of the things that made me or inspired me to want to go and do my 3 to 6 training is because at some point when my children are ready to go to the 3 to 6 environment, their parents have some questions they want to ask me. What is going to be different? I mean, what are they going to be doing in the 3 to 6 environment? And you just have to give them like an introduction of what the 3 to 6 what the 3 to 6 environment is like. So my long-term goal is to become a trainer. And so I would like to start by doing the 3 to 6, 6 to 12, and then at some point, not anytime soon, but one day I would really love to be a trainer. So that is one of the reasons why I would like to do the 3 to 6. And one of the reasons that might not let me, that might not or that might work as a barrier for me to go for the 3 to 6. It's because of the 6 fees in London. It's really expensive, and I'm trying my best to get some sponsors and also to raise some money for me to be able to go to do the training. And depending on the outcome, that is going to that's when I'll be able to see if I'll do it or not do it. But if I can't do it in this year, I'll obviously do it at some point. So it's because of financial reasons if I don't go for it. But other than that, I'm really prepared to go and do the 3 to 6 training.
That's really, really amazing, Gamu. And for anyone that doesn't know on this call, to become a trainer is a huge thing. I mean, I know that there are very, very few trainers, people who have actually qualified to be able to teach teachers how to be Montessori teachers in the environment. It's a massive, massive thing. And for Gamu, you're still so young, and super, super inspiring. And I'm absolutely sure, Gamu, that you'll make it. And also you've got children now that are going to roll through that phase. So you'll be able to jump on all of their explosions in this and explosions in that.
Exactly.
It's really cool, Gamu.
Yeah, so that's another reason why I would like to do it. I mean, having done the 0 to 3 training, it really helped me with Tanisha and now with Keisha. And now that Tanisha is in the 3 to 6 environment, I would really love to provide the same support and implement the same at home like I did when she was in the 0 to 3 environment.
What do you think is going to be essential for the future of Montessori education? Obviously, the last 12 months has been a very strange time for people working in education, especially working in a classroom. But what do you think is essential for the future of Montessori education in Africa and all over the world?
Okay. So when I was looking at the questions and I was thinking, and I just sat down and started thinking, what am I going to say when Semi asks me this question? Like, what is it that is coming from my heart? So, with whatever is happening in the world with the pandemic and things like that, I think before Montessori was more of one-on-one, the teacher and the child being in the environment. But with the coronavirus the pandemic that hit the whole world last year. I mean, we had to learn and we had to bring up new ways of bringing the Montessori into the homes of each and every into the homes of the parents. So we had some parents who were struggling with the kids and sending us messages all the time. How can we help the kids? We don't know what to do, and we just had to step in. And I know Montessori doesn't encourage screen time, but during that period, and I believe it was happening everywhere because I had some friends I was asking, and they also told me the same thing that they were doing Zoom classes with their kids, and it really helped. We had some feedback from the parents saying it was so much different the time we had the Zoom classes and before we had them. They could see the great change in the kids. We tried to have some activities online and we just try to interact with the children to make sure they get to see us, get to see their friends, do some practical life activities with them. And it really helped us so much. And I think at some point in the future, if there has to be a way of how teachers can help children in terms of pandemics like this one. If it ever happens again, there has to be a way of how the kids will be helped. And yeah. And another thing, sorry, can I go on?
Yeah, of course. Go on.
Okay, so another thing I was thinking about is I've been watching some documentaries of some places, different places all over the world from less privileged families. And I just think that to be able to do the Montessori training, you have to have a lot of money. It's so expensive. And I think the world really needs more and more trained Montessori teachers. But because it's very expensive, not everyone is able to do the training. I have a lot of friends from South Africa. So just that everybody knows, for me to be able to do the training, I had to apply to get a bursary, which I got. I was amongst one of the 5 girls who were chosen to do the training, and I was very grateful for that. And I think there has to be more and more opportunities for girls from less privileged families, so they'll be able to do it. And also for the Montessori schools that I have come to know about, they're very expensive. And if the world could find a way, or if all of us who are passionate about it, could find a way of bringing the Montessori to the less privileged families that also need it. I think this is a very great way of of watching children develop to their full potential. So if there could be a way of bringing it to the less privileged families, I think it would be excellent. And I think the world would just be a better place.
Absolutely, Gamu. I completely agree with you. And actually, on that note, you've really summed up the whole interview, because that is exactly what Simone and her team and we're all trying to do with Montessori everywhere. Is we're trying to make it accessible for everybody, so everybody is able to understand and learn and keep learning it, so that we are able to support the children that are growing up in the world today. Because most people above the age of 20 are living in a very different world to the world that we all grew up in. So we need to grow with these children. And amazing, Gamu. Thank you so much. So just before we all go, I'd just really like to quickly open up to the audience to see if anyone does have any questions. Please let us know maybe in the chat, and we can, we've got another 15 minutes, we can open it up. So does anybody have any questions for Gamu before we go?
Yeah, I think Gazella wrote a question earlier. Do you want to speak up, Gazella?
Hi there. Yes, this is Gazella. Hi, Gamu. Hi, everybody. So nice to meet you from Canada. I was just wondering, I'm not sure the type of accreditation they would have in South Africa or the Ivory Coast. In North America and Canada and the US, I know we have AMI, we have AMS, we also have MACD. Which certification do you have?
Hi, Gisela. So I have AMI.
That's interesting. So that's what's used. Like, would other sorts of training be other accreditations be accepted in your country, or is it strictly AMI as far as you know?
I think I haven't got a lot of idea if it's only AMI that is accepted, but I think you get some schools that accept AMI and you get some schools that accept either AMS. I think AMS and AMI, they're almost the same because I've seen schools asking for both, for either the two of them. But I think in South Africa, you also have some Montessori trainings that are not AMI or AMS, that are just Montessori trainings that they get online. So it depends with which school you are going to, and each school accept different trainings.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And Gisela, just to add to that very, very quickly, Gamu and I were actually on the first course AMI training in Africa in 2017. So AMI is very, very recent to South Africa. So actually, up until this point, AMI and these accreditations that we're talking about have not been here. And actually, Prudence was saying, it was very interesting. Prue was saying in Nigeria, it's very common for Montessori schools to be called Montessori schools, but not actually be Montessori schools.
Yeah, thanks very much. One of the reasons I was asking, I was wondering if I ever wanted to work in South Africa, if MACD would be accepted. But anyway, it's interesting. Thank you very much for your feedback.
Cool. Okay, any more questions? Let's have a look.
Yes, Tabitha. Tabitha has a question. Do you want to speak up, Tabitha, or you want us to read out your question?
Yeah, my question, I'm joining from Syracuse, New York. And here we just opened up a public Montessori school. So that's like a government school in Africa. And basically, I was just wondering, how does the Montessori education help change the mindsets of children in Africa? Because I know that my family's from Zambia, and I used to work in Zambia. And one argument I would have with some people when I was teaching at the international school is that the traditional Zambian education is so rigid, and like you were saying earlier, Gamu, you're just told what to do. The teachers give you everything to do, whereas Montessori is more free, where the students are able to explore. So for those of you that have been working with Montessori in Africa, do you see a different mindset with how the children are able to grow and develop, and just if they're like older kids, like how they're thinking and things like that? That's my question.
Okay, so I have only been in the environment for I think 3 school years, and I will not be able to give you the best answer on that one. But from what I've seen for the past 2-3 years, is that there is definitely a difference between the children that grow up in a Montessori environment and children that are outside the Montessori environment. So I think Sammy will back me up on this one. And in Newberry, when we were in Newberry House, I remember in 2018 when we were there was a group of students that brought the Cambridge exams just after because Newberry House has got all the way to 18 years. And there was a group of children that brought the Cambridge exams, and they passed exceptionally well, and they had never been in a normal traditional environment. So that only just showed us that Montessori is definitely effective, and it definitely lets the child develop to their full potential. So I don't know if Sammy, you have something to say, or Prudence. I'm sure Prudence will have a lot to say on this one as well.
I really don't have much to say on this one. Yeah.
I can help you there. So we basically the goals at Newberry House were the same as the ones that you would have in a traditional school. So as Gamu said correctly, they would sit Cambridge exams like the students would in the neighboring traditional school. It was just obviously the way that we got the children to where they needed to be. The one thing that I found in Africa was everyone, I mean, especially in the farm school that we were working in, I don't know if you remember, Gamu, but I don't think I saw the children during the summer months ever wear shoes. It was so authentic. The materials that we used were all handmade wooden materials. It was a basic but beautiful environment, which is in itself very Montessori. So if you're a product of a traditionally educated person or a mother of, and you're trying to juggle, if I send my children to a Montessori school, are they going to get to, are they going to be able to achieve the results that we want them to achieve later on in life, or whatever your expectations as a parent are? It's a challenge. It really is a challenge, because if you don't understand what's going on, it's like a world of its own in a Montessori classroom. But I think, I don't know if that answered your question.
I think it does, because my whole thing was that right now, even here in New York, in public schools, we just feel like we have to give all the students the answers, and they don't really want to do that research, or they don't really want to do that thinking for themselves. So I know that was an issue when I was teaching in Zambia, where it's like, oh, they're waiting for the answers from the adults. So it's good to know that those students that were in a Montessori school were able to get their learning their way that they did, and they still excelled in their exams too, because they were able to be free thinkers.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is always more than one way of finding an answer. And more often than not, there are many children in the classroom that are going to get to that answer in a completely different way. And in a traditional classroom, they're guiding you along one avenue, whereas in a Montessori classroom, you've got many different avenues. You choose, and the teacher in the classroom is there to guide you, really to observe where the child is at and what route they're choosing to take, and just follow them down that route and help them get to the end goal, whether that's an answer, whether that's passing an exam, whatever it is. But it's much freer.
One experience I have, though, in relation to this, is that children from traditional school, they struggle to go to school because it's very tedious and demanding. But when they find themselves in Montessori environment, they don't even want to go home. It's so welcoming, and it's so inclusive. From my experience at my school, lots of children run away when their parents come to pick them to go home. So I think that also speaks to the method we use in Montessori as against the traditional.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think that's great. Thank you.
Cool, no worries. Okay, I think we have time for one or two more questions.
Akshata?
I just wanted to know if we can connect with Gamu outside this call. Like, is she in social media or somewhere? We would love to follow your journey, Gamu. Keep inspiring.
Okay, thank you. I'll definitely maybe open an Instagram page and share my journey with you guys, and I'll let you know. And thank you.
So I think we have one question from two people about the use of Montessori material in this present pandemic situation where online learning is more relevant today.
So Gamu, how have you been managing online learning for children in a Montessori way?
Okay, so in the beginning it was a little bit difficult, because with the 0 to 3 age group, they cannot sit for a very long time and pay attention to a screen. I mean, there's some people who introduce their kids to screen time and who are used to being on the screens, and there's some children who had never been introduced to screen time, and this was the first time ever they were trying to sit down and listen or pay attention to what we were doing. So we really had short classes 3 times a week, just 20 minutes. And some kids were not able to concentrate until the end, right through the end. And some people were able, the older ones from 2 years were able to sit and concentrate on what we were doing. So we would start off by singing some songs just to draw their attention, and on if we were doing a practical life activity, maybe a food activity, an egg peeling or slicing, then just after singing a bit, and then we'd start doing the presentation. And what we did is would send out messages to parents and let them know what to prepare for the activity. And so when we'd start doing the presentation, the parent would be doing the presentation with the child. So they will be standing in the teacher's shoes to lead, to help the child do the activity. And we would explain to them that it doesn't matter whichever way the child wants to do it. It doesn't mean that the way we are showing them how to do it is the only right way. So the child is free to do whatever they want to do, whichever way they want to do. And it really worked in the end. I mean, the children would wait for the classes, and we had so much fun with them. We'd read some stories, which were a bit difficult to get them to listen until the end. So would have like 3 pages, and that was okay. And then spend the rest of the time singing. And as long as the parents had prepared the materials for the child to do the presentation along with us, it was much easier for the child to pay attention and concentrate on whatever they were doing.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gamu. I think one of the biggest challenges and one of the things that we've really had to focus on as teachers during this time has been guiding parents and really supporting parents in what they can do to keep their children busy and to keep their children learning, and to allow themselves also space to continue with their lives. Okay. I think, any more questions, Prue?
No, I do have one question for Gamu though. I was wondering if you would speak to respect the child and the African culture in brief, Gamu, because that's a struggle for all of us. You mentioned it earlier, but how does that affect your practice? Or do you think we're getting somewhere with Montessori? Because here in Africa, we just dole it out to the children. We instruct them. We just dish it out. We instruct them. We give instructions. They don't have a say, so to speak, in carrying out our instruction. We don't respect the child in that regard. Do you think Montessori is helping us make a headway in Africa with regards to respecting the child as it is globally Montessori practice?
So that's a very good question. So what you said, I absolutely agree with, that in Africa, we don't really necessarily respect the child. So I've had, for instance, I remember one incident when Tanisha was born, and I had some workmates of mine coming to visit the child. So we don't, as Africans, like people who have no idea of the Montessori philosophy, they don't know that the first 6 weeks, during the symbiotic periods, it's just for the mom and the family to bond with the child and help the child build trust in the world. So I was struggling with people always coming to visit Tanisha when she was born, and that was the same thing with Keisha. I mean, people didn't really respect, and people would be playing some loud music around her, talking so loudly, all those small things that Maria Montessori mentions during this symbiotic period that we have to respect. I found it difficult to make sure that people were respecting them because people didn't know. And I think it is because people have no idea. People do not know much about Montessori. People do not know what is the Montessori movement. Like, what is it? What's the change that can be brought by the Montessori movement? There's so many things that even today, if I look around and I see people around me that have no idea things that they're doing, which they're not supposed to be doing, but it's just because they lack the knowledge. They do not know anything. They do not know any better how to respect the human. And another thing I mentioned, that here in Africa, we always dictate for the child, this is what you're going to do. You don't question authority, things like that. The child has to follow you.
It's a big struggle. That's what I wanted. I wanted her to speak to it in her years of practice. Yeah, because for us, it's a culture that we need to get out from. It's a culture that is something we need to unlearn. Yeah. The Montessori method is huge on respect for the child. And we've seen the transformation. I personally have seen it in my practice. So it's something that we need. For example, I have parents who bring their children to school and say, I want the child to be disciplined. I want him to be instructed in a way that, you know, when you say sit down, the child sits down. And that's not the Montessori way. You know, so I'm beginning to speak to more parents about developing the will of the child to respect, that respect is reciprocal. Respect is something that the child will give willingly and not demanded from the child. So if we respect the child will respect us as well. It's a huge ongoing conversation in Nigeria, and I think the whole of Africa. And it's something that Montessorians all over the world should push and make happen in the rest part of the world. It's just it's an ongoing struggle for us as Montessorians practicing in Africa to be able to bring to birth the new child, that the universal child that Montessori speaks of. Yeah, so anytime it's got to do with respect for the child is a huge one here. In my case, what I do is try to educate the parents. And during the onboarding of the family into the school, we have strong, lengthy conversations on expectations. Because the expectations for education here is more of academics rather than the totality of the child that Montessori promotes. So we have long conversations on how our environment is not just an academic place, but a place where the child is guided to its total development. And I think, like what Gamu said earlier, having more Montessori practitioners in Africa would do a lot. And this is what Montessori everywhere is trying to achieve by bringing Montessori to every part of the world. And I think we need to support this movement. We need to speak about it. We need to commit to it. And we need to do all that we can to ensure that Montessori goes over all the shores of the world.
Absolutely. And it's about also us as adults surrendering to the fact that we also must continue learning. There's never an end. It's a constant journey for all of us. And we must keep evolving so that we can support the children who are also evolving in a very different world to the world that we all grew up in.
There's a question from Ayodele. There's a question from Ayodele that says, Gamu, is there a way your background in traditional education helped you in teaching Montessori better?
And I just think, like, from my background, I don't think my traditional background really helped me in my Montessori journey. It's because it's completely the opposite, if I may put it in that way. It's completely the opposite of what I'm doing right now. And I've given a few examples of what is being practiced from my traditional background and what I have to deliver. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Yeah, you're totally making sense, Gamu. And someone has written very
exactly
in the chat. What you're learning from your traditional education is how not to do it, or how you, I guess, like,
yes,
it's a lesson in itself, right? If that's
Accept, Akshata, you just spoke our mind because we're all thinking the same thing. Simone said the same thing. So reflecting, having traditional background just helps you to know how not to parent your kids, know how not to guide the children in the wrong direction. Yeah. Thank you so much, Akshata.
Prue, do we have any more questions that you can see? I think we've got time for one more quick one.
I think we're done, except maybe from me, Gamu, I was wondering, having practiced in Zimbabwe, in South Africa and Ivory Coast, I don't know how much of your Montessori you brought into Zimbabwe. In comparison, would you say Montessori is doing better in South Africa, Ivory Coast, or in Zimbabwe?
Okay, so I would not have any idea about Zimbabwe, but in South Africa, I think Montessori has just started in the Ivory Coast. So the school I'm working at, it's been the first AMI Montessori school, and it's been running for the past 5 years. And I think in South Africa, we have schools, like I said earlier, that have been running, or Montessori schools that were given, that started in as early as the 1970s. So I think over here it has just started. So we have another school that has was opened last year in the Ivory Coast, so which is the second Montessori school. Another one I've heard about is not 100% Montessori, so which means maybe in total we have like 3 Montessori schools, with one being AMI, fully AMI Montessori school. And I forgot to mention that another reason why I wanted to do my 3 to 6 training in London was because I wanted to go the degree route. So I wanted to make sure that I obtain my degree as well as my AMI 3 to 6 diploma. So that was one of the reasons. And also because I get to do that during the summer holidays. So I'll still be able to work and support my family and do the training at the same time over 3 summers.
Amazing, Gamu. Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone has really, really enjoyed this chat, and it's a real eye-opener into the world of Montessori in Africa. You really are truly inspiring to all the women out there and all the teachers who work in the Montessori world. So thank you. And I will definitely keep everyone in the loop when Gamu opens an Instagram, or I'll make sure that everyone has access to Gamu's account if you'd like to follow her.
So thank you very much to everybody for listening, taking some time to listen. And thank you, Sammy, for choosing me to do the interview. Thank you, Prudence. Thank you, Simon. I really appreciate you guys. And thank you to all of you guys who have been here tonight to listen to my story. Thank you. Really means a lot.